Matt, can you hear that? I think someone's knocking at the door. I sat up in bed and checked the watch on my dresser, 2:15. The wind has a way of making the most innocent sounds suspicious. A tapping at the window could be nothing more than an exposed branch. A scraping on the ceiling could be just something stuck on the roof. A pounding at the door, well, that could mean any number of things. Busted pipes, expanding air ducts, even something as innocent as a front door ornament getting a little too ornery. We've actually had that one happen before too. But as I listened for traces of movement in the night, I knew my wife had to be right. The 3 dramatically clear knocks again echoed down the hallway of our small home. What do they want? Who is it? It's 2 in the friggin' morning, Em whispered. I hopped out of bed and threw on some basketball shorts in the dark. The lights were out, and I flicked the switch by my nightstand a few times, and nothing responded. I grunted and then yowled a bit after stepping on a cat toy, and Em scolded me for that. Quiet! Now he knows we're home. 3 more consistent knocks seemed to confirm her theory. How do you know it's a he? I whispered with a silent smile. It was a shameless little game that I played to make her scared. We had been through this routine fairly often in the past few weeks. Em was always hearing things in the night. Ever since we moved, in fact, and I was always the investigator, with my trusty Louisville slugger from high school by my side, and I never found anything. But my looking always made her feel better. Our house was in the country and tended to set my wife on edge a bit. 3 more knocks, and they sounded hurried now. I stumbled into the living room, still aching from my bumped toe, and reached for the trusty Louisville waiting in its spot behind the couch. The knocks began to lose all rhythm, and the owner pounded the door anxiously, apparently losing patience before his angry footsteps just retreated down the porch. I waited a moment, and then I opened the door. The storm had added several inches of snow overnight, and the wind pushed it right up into my face. We had heard about horrible traffic on the parkway. Commuters had been stuck for hours, and people had actually abandoned their cars instead of opting to walk home and get them later. The local road that led to my house was itself left unblemished by plows or tires. Only a single pair of footprints led from the highway, a few miles away, all the way to our front door. Standing at the end of them and at the bottom of my front steps was an ordinary-looking man. I couldn't see most of his features at first, and he wore a heavy black parka with a dorky feathered hood on top, shielding his head from the wind. Dark snow pants almost covered a pair of pristine tan Timberland-like boots, and something about the outfit just looked familiar. The man appeared to be ready to give up and go away as he fumbled for something in his pockets, but I called out to him. I don't know why. Maybe I felt more confident with the bat by my side or something. Can I help you? The stranger turned at once in relief. He looked to be middle-aged, and dark black hair peeked out through the hood and dangled in front of a cool blue eye. He helped up the steps immediately and reached out confidently to shake my hand. When he spoke, his voice sounded oddly high-pitched. His breath and coat stunk of some unfamiliar type of old man cologne, too. Oh, thank God. Thank God for good Samaritans. Sir, my car broke down on the highway, a few miles from here. The engine's dead and my cell phone's out of battery and... fucking technology, right? I'm from out of town and I don't know my ass from the back road out here. I know it's late and I know how this must look, but would you mind if I stepped inside and just used your phone? I looked the man up and down uneasily, and he seemed harmless enough. But if my older brother taught me one thing, it's don't trust a strange man in your house after hours. I tried to think of a way to let the stranger down easily, and instead I opted for the truth. Our phone's dead, unfortunately, and the power's out here too. Sorry about that, man. He looked wounded, and that definitely stung my conscience a bit. He turned to stare helplessly at the acres of empty, untouched snow before him. 7 or 8 inches had stacked up in some places, and the plows were nowhere to be seen. The town was almost always woefully unprepared for unexpected storms. The man's lack of options quickly became apparent, too. Okay, well, I guess I better get walking then, huh? I felt a brush of satin before my wife appeared by my side. You could stay here a bit, sir, until the power comes back. I pushed the door back a bit and whispered angrily to Emily. What are you doing? We don't know this man. So what? He's stuck. It's all over Facebook. The highway's still backed up. This is something my dad would do, okay? Sneak out of the house during a storm for some fast food or something. Plus, you heard him. We're the Good Samaritans, just like the Bible. Great. Somebody started to take church a little too seriously. I tried to disguise my groan before throwing the door back open. Well, how about it then, man? You can sleep on the couch until morning if you like. The man nodded graciously and pushed himself past me. He immediately began pulling off waterlogged clothing in our hallway, and upon closer inspection, all of it appeared to be about 3 sizes too small. I didn't think much of it at the time. I'll go and throw this in the dryer, okay? Emily offered. And I'll run it when the power comes back. She disappeared down the stairs as the man made himself comfortable on my couch. He pulled out an old cell phone and stared down at it, surprised. Hey, you got a towel by any chance? He asked me, pointing to the sopping mess accumulating on our wood floors. Or maybe some clothes? I ran into the bathroom to search the closet for spare towels. Something about the man's arrogance annoyed me, though. Here we were, allowing him into our home in the middle of the night without suspicion, and he was already barking orders. I found an old rag, though, buried under a basket filled with mascara, and I pulled it loose. But when I came back outside, the stranger had stretched his long legs fully out on a couch. You know, that's a pretty sweet wife you got there, man, he said as I wiped up the mess. Pretty sweet indeed, if you ask me. But wish I had one that sweet. The words made my skin crawl. Emily waltzed up from the basement in a hurry and smiled happily to both of us in the living room. Sorry about that. Hopefully the power comes back on soon. I wanted to say something to her, but not in front of the creep. And he stared at her like a dog, eyeing a brand new bone. And I suddenly noticed the shorts that she was wearing. I noticed the lack of bra, and we were just in bed after all, and the stranger seemed to notice too. Say, honey, do you work out a lot? He asked. My wife blushed and covered herself apologetically. She always looked for the best in people, and she had heard her fair share of inappropriate jokes in the day. Oh, I should put something on. Excuse me. I moved to follow her into the bedroom as a familiar jingle danced its way towards the couch. Oh, look at that. You've got yourself a fat cat. My tuxedo kitten Figaro hopped happily onto the couch and into the man's outstretched arms. He purred at the attention from such new and strange company. But the man happily allowed his face to be licked and pawed, and he reached out and snatched Fig up with his burly arms. Yeah, he's a good boy, I explained awkwardly. Loves attention. The man smiled a toothy grin in my direction as he offered generous pecks to Figaro's confused forehead. Oh, they all do. They all do. You know, they say cats are one of the only animals to prefer human interaction to food. They actually tested it in a lab somewhere. Trust of man is built into most house cats' basic instincts, apparently. Through years of selective breeding, most of these things just trust us implicitly. Isn't that something? I nodded and I said nothing. But something about the way he squeezed Figaro closer to him just made me uncomfortable. You know, I could snap this little shit's neck right now, and he'd even let me do it. And that did it. Listen, man, I'm sorry if this is rude, but I think you should leave. The stranger blinked. The atmosphere in my living room changed in an instant. A moment's hesitation caused Figaro to hiss and jump through his weakened grip. The ringing bell disappeared down the stairs. Well, that doesn't seem very Christian of you. I grabbed the bat, still resting up against the front door at this point. Yeah, well, we're Catholic, all right? My wife called out from the bedroom. Matt, is everything all right? I shouted my reply without ever taking my eyes off the stranger in front of me. Stay in the bedroom and lock the door, okay? He got to his feet lazily. He was smiling, like the threat of me holding a bat amused him or something. And maybe that wasn't such a bad assertion. At his full height, the stranger stood well over 6 feet tall and easily dwarfed my scrawny 5'10". Yes, Emily, stay in bed. I'll be done with your husband shortly. He advanced in a flash, and so I swung the bat like it was instinct of my own. My brother always told me that if you get in a fight with a bigger man, aim for his knees, and so I did exactly that. I leaned the small cylinder of metal directly across the stranger's kneecaps like my life depended on it. And I think it did. The stranger's knee shattered like a piece of glass. Emily later said that she could hear the impact from our bedroom. My next blow went to his face, a double tap if you will, and I grabbed the jerk by his collar and immediately dragged him the fuck out of my house. I left him by the foot of our porch and I locked the door. I joined Emily in the additional locked bedroom as she frantically described our situation to dispatch on her now working cell phone. Officers were making their way towards our house, but the snow impeded their travel. We heard someone dragging themselves up the steps, and we heard him try to jimmy the door handle. After several unsuccessful attempts, he screamed at us through the night and then just went quiet. I stood with the bat against my shoulder and waited for him to come back, but it never came to that. Now, I know some of you guys might be thinking that I overreacted, but I assure you that I didn't. The police officers swarmed my house approximately an hour later, and they found the stranger unconscious by the front porch of our home. We described the situation to the detectives exactly as I have here, word for word in fact. The man was arrested and processed accordingly too. A few hours later, additional forces were sent to check in on my neighbors too. It was a routine activity, and they just wanted to see if they could garner more witnesses, but what they found precluded that necessity. The stranger apparently made a previous stop that night. 2 miles down the road sat a nice family, husband, wife, 2 young daughters around my sister's age. Well, one of them worked at the school coffee shop, in fact, and we had met her a handful of times. The other was studying for grad school, and they were murdered inside their own home. Every single last one of them was taken. Mum, dad, and daughters. The stranger left 4 bodies just untouched, sitting and waiting by the front door. The only items missing from the household were one daughter's snow clothes, a black parka, dark pants, and tan Timberland boots.